Hello, I'm James, and this is the Q. Imagine, if you will, that you have Jean Grey, Professor's protege in the field, and your opponent fields a Gazer Evil Familiar. What happens? Let's have a look. Jean Grey, there she is, you're on the right. Gazer comes in and intimidates away your Jean Grey, and that, you might think, is the end of it. But you'd be wrong, because he gets knocked out. What? Let's have a look at the rules. Okay, each game effect has two parts, a trigger and a resolution. And although loads of things might be triggered simultaneously, we generally have to resolve them one at a time. And this is where the tricky stuff often comes in. First, we resolve all of the active players' triggered effects in the order of their choosing. And then we resolve all the inactive players' triggered effects in the order of their choosing. Right, let's see how that affects our Jean Gazer situation. You've got your Jean in the field on the right, and your opponent fields the Gazer, which triggers simultaneously both Gazer's effect and Jean Grey's effect. Gazer gets resolved first because he belongs to the active player, so he intimidates away Jean. And now, even though Jean's die has gone from the field, her effect, her ability, has already entered the queue, so we have to resolve it. And so, as she's on level 2, she does 2 damage to Gazer and knocks him out. See you later, mate. So, what have we learnt from this? Well, the first thing, somewhat counterintuitively, is that once an effect is in the queue, it will resolve when the time comes, even if the source die is no longer active. And we saw this with Jean. Her die had been removed from the field, but she still managed to knock Gazer out. Picture it, if you will, like her doing a psionic blast just as she's leaving the frame. This is always true unless the source of the effect, somewhere between its trigger and its resolution, gets blanked or ignored. To explain this a little bit more, let's have a look at the queen of blanking herself, Shriek Sonic Beam. Let's imagine that you have the same Jean Grey in the field alongside Boom Boom Time Bomb, and your opponent fields a Shriek. This triggers both her own effect and Jean Grey's effect like last time. When we come to resolving effects, we start with the active player, so that's Shriek, and they have a choice between blanking Jean's card and Boom Boom's card. Let's see first what happens if they blank Boom Boom. Next, we'll come to resolving Jean Grey's effect, and I would imagine that you, as she's level 2, you will direct her 2 damage straight to that nasty Shriek, who will get knocked out, and Boom Boom will now be unblanked. Bingo! The only real alternative for your opponent is to blank Jean's card instead of Boom Boom's. And this time, when we come to resolve Jean's ability, there's just no text there. We're ignoring a text, it's blank, so nothing happens. And this is the only way, really, that you can stop something happening which has already entered the queue. So nothing happens, and you're left with an active Boom Boom in the field ready to do some damage. Okay, so we've had a little look at what happens if a card gets blanked in between the trigger and the resolution, but what happens if the card is blanked before it's even triggered? Well, pretty obviously, if a card is being ignored or blanked when its effect would be triggered, the effect does not trigger and does not get added to the queue. You would think this is obvious, but I had a bit of an issue with this the other day with Mimic and the Yellow Lantern Ring. Let's imagine that you've got a Shriek in the field and you're shrieking my Mimic, which has previously copied a Psychic but is currently blanked. And I've rolled a Yellow Lantern Ring, and I'm going to field a Sidekick. Now, that Sidekick came from my reserve pool. I rolled it naturally, and therefore, because of the Yellow Lantern Ring, it gained Intimidate. So, when I intimidate away your Shriek, am I going to prep 2 dice from Mimic or not? That's the question. And the answer is no, because when the Psychic was fielded, the thing that would have triggered Mimic, he was still blanked, so he didn't trigger and he didn't get added to the queue. So all I get to do is intimidate away your Shriek. If I field now another Psychic, Mimic is no longer blank, so I would get to both intimidate something and prep my 2 dice. Yay! And those are the basics of the queue. It's not really all that hard, is it? Join me next time for a few more complex examples. Till then, bye bye.